Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast and the Class. Breakfast and the Class today is sponsored by Benjamin Navi, dedicated in loving memory of his grandfather, Lilun Ishmat Moshe Chaim Ben Goli, and Rahamim HaKohen Alav Ashalom. Also, dedicated for speedy complete for Hashem, for our Minich Hanafar Chana Batzema Fega, for our, what's it called, for our dear friend Rabbi Eli Abadi Elev Shem Mazafu Tunei, and as well, the Week of Kobru sponsored by David Yash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to do today and every day. We'd like to wish a Mazal Tov and a Mabruk to the young couple from last night, to Yehuda Chalu and Gabby Krauscher, who got married last night. We should be zocher always to have incredible semachot, one after the next, and to Stanley Chira on the birth of and the Brit Milah of his baby Benyamin. Mazal Tov, Mazal Tov, Mazal Tov. Last but not least, announcement before we begin our Divrei Torah. We have a beautiful opportunity. We spoke a little bit about the special mitzvah of tzitzit a couple weeks ago. And someone was very inspired and they donated 50 pairs of beautiful tzitzit. The tzitzit for Sephardim, which have to be made out of wool. So they now make them as a t-shirt. It's a very comfortable t-shirt you can wear on your skin. So anyone that's willing to wear it at least once a week, if you don't have tzitzit already, if If you're willing to wear it at least once a week, I have a pair of tzitzit with your name on it. Let me know, and I've been driving around with them in my car. Baby, are you guys up for it? I saw that. Was that you were up for it? Yeah? You guys in? Yeah? In? 3, 4? Beautiful. Okay. I think I've given away already like 15 or 20 pairs. And one of the guys who got a pair was so excited, he decided he's sponsoring the next 20. So we have pairs of tzitzit, Rabotai. At least once a week. Wear it on Shabbat. You're supposed to wear it every day, but you got to start small. If you go too quick, you get nothing, right? You just dump it after a week. So at least once a week, I got a pair of tzitzit with your name. They're not cheap, so we're very excited to be able to give this to people. L'chaim. Okay, let's begin. The pasuk says in this week's parasha, "Ka'asher yaser ish et beno," just as a man yaser. Can someone translate that word in Hebrew? From a language of Yisurim. Like a man tortures his son. Ken Hashem Elokecha miyasreka. So too does Hashem torture you.
Or make him suffer.
Just like a father makes his son suffer, so too does Hashem make you suffer. Is that a good example? I mean, does your father make you suffer? So the word yiyaser is a very interesting word, okay? And I'd like to point out what this word actually means. The word yisurin means suffering. It means pain. We talk about a person who has yisurin, that those yisurin are kapara. When someone is not well, when someone is suffering financially, relationship-wise, that's yisurin. So that sounds a little bit odd, that Hashem is making you suffer like a father makes you suffer. The answer is very, very interesting. What is at the root of the word yisurin? Liyaser. What is at the root of that word? The root of that word is sar. Sar. Vayar Adonai, the pasuk says by Moshe Rabbeinu, and God saw kisar lirot, that he had turned to see. So the word sar means to turn. Another expression of that in the Torah, the pasuk says that God says to Moshe, this people that you took out of Egypt, saru maher min haderech. Saru means they turned from the road. And they, so to speak, followed the wrong path. So sar means to turn. Yisuri means where God turns you. Except, my friends, that how much a person gets turned and how much it hurts to turn is dependent on how far gone a person is. Let me express what this idea actually means. I had a friend who had a very strange, condition where all the time, he'd be at a wedding or something, and his shoulder would just pop out of its socket. Anyone know someone like this? Yeah? Had a problem, it never kind of got like connected properly again. So his shoulder would pop out of the socket. To pop the shoulder back in the socket, it was extraordinarily painful. To the point that he would basically go up to a wall and throw his shoulder against the wall, and it would bang it back in. And the pain was so intense in that moment where it would pop back in that he would sometimes almost black out from the pain. You see, if my hand is like this, moving my hand over there just means doing that. But what if my hand has completely come out of the socket? And in order to put my hand back where it is, it's incredibly painful. Would anyone say that if a fellow was helping him get his shoulder back in the socket that he was torturing him? Of course not. But my friends, that is the nature of sar and yisurin, of a person turning and having that turn rectified be painful. When we are experiencing pain, when God is guiding us, sometimes that guidance is very, very tough. And it can feel extraordinarily painful. And sometimes in the pain, you forget the fact that this is actually helping me get back to a place where I want to be. I just want to share such a horrible experience. We had, unfortunately, a fellow who was so addicted to drugs that he threw everything in his life away in order to get his next hit. I don't know if most people don't have experience with a very, very bad addiction. But when a person gets to that level of addiction, they're no longer in possession of their own faculties. They'll spend all their money. They'd rather have their drugs than have their food. It's terrible. They'll steal money from parents. They'll sell priceless family heirlooms for a few dollars in a pawn shop because they're desperate to get that hit that they need. And they're not in a place anymore. They'll bash a window of a car in because they'll see $3 and break their hand, by the way, just in order to get their next fix. At that point, unfortunately, a person is in a very, very dire straits. Anyway, so we had one fellow who was very, very addicted. And the parents, they were asked for my help. They knew he was close with me from in the past. And they said, look, we're going to do something. We need to stop him. In the end, they figured out where he was going. A lot of times these people think that they're being much more, covert than they actually are. They're not necessarily in all possession of their faculties. And it was something the parents knew. Anyway, we went down there, and the guy had gotten a hold of whatever it was that he was taking. And we stopped him, and we held him down, and we went through his pockets, and we took away his drugs. And we started telling him about how he needs to get help, and this and that. And this boy starts crying. And I thought, wow, so nice. Rabbi, you did such a good job. And one time you really got through to him. And he's crying. And he starts talking, but he's crying so hard. He's ugly crying. Can't hear what he's saying. And I was like, don't worry, it's going to be okay. We'll help you go to rehab. And he's crying. Finally, he calms down. He's like, please, don't take them away from me. I need it. You don't understand. Rabbi, please get back to me. You don't understand. I need. It was such a sad scene. And he's begging and pleading for this thing. It's actually killing him. My friends, with all of us, that is the Sar Yisurin conundrum. We're crying over the fact that something hurts, and make no mistake, when you take that away from someone, the withdrawal symptoms a person suffers are very real. There's a tremendous amount of pain. But what are we doing? We're breaking an addiction. And when you break that addiction, it can be very hard. But that person is actually doing you the biggest kindness. They're giving you your life back. That's the Sar Yisurin conundrum. You have a person who's losing his parnasah, and it's very painful. He doesn't understand why. But meanwhile, the parnasah that he had, his wealth was actually tearing him apart from his family. How many times do you hear about people who have so much money they couldn't spend it if they tried? They use dollars instead of toilet paper. I mean, there's very wealthy people. And then they're fighting with family over something that for them, it's not a lot of money for them. And they're going to court and they're hiring lawyers, and the money that they're going to recover with the lawyers, the lawyers' fees is almost the same as the money. And what are you doing? A person like that, for them to lose their money would be the biggest beracha. Shema Yisrael. If that's what the money did to you. You know, you have a person who unfortunately gets so caught up in his own looks and his own ego and his own successes that he stops seeing everybody around him. And the real cost of that ego is his family, is his children, is his wife, correct? Is his relationship with his parents. God takes him down a couple pegs, not in punishment, not to get him, not to torture him, but to wean him off this addiction to self. You can be addicted to anything, and I love sharing this idea. They did a study on the brains of addicts. So you would imagine a heroin or a cocaine addict, the influence that those drugs make on the brain. And they noticed that there's a certain amount of gray cells versus white cells in the brain, right? And the difference between them in a healthy brain and in the brain of someone who's addicted to drugs is way off. But the crazy thing is, then they did scans and they found similar patterns in the brain cells in people who were addicted to, not drugs, alcohol. Okay, you're thinking, okay, alcohol, that's what's killing brain cells. But then they found it in people that were addicted to technology. I mean, just craziness. I was reading a while ago, there's the craze of people being online and not knowing how to distinguish between online and the real world. And there was a Japanese couple who, in taking care of some sort of online, gaming platform where they had a baby that they were taking care of or whatever, they neglected their own human baby, and their baby died from malnutrition and lack of taking care of this child. It's unbelievable. You look at the brain of a person who's addicted to technology, addicted to gambling, addicted to anything, and you'll find the exact same mental structure, cranial structure. My friends, what this illustrates is that being addicted to anything in many ways is the same as being addicted to anything else. If you're addicted to your ego, if you're addicted to being right, if you're addicted to being the person who always has to command the respect of everybody, even when you've done the wrong thing, then your brain structure looks in a way that is comparable to someone who, why? Because just like the drug addict can't make a decision when it comes to his drugs, a person who's so addicted to being a social justice warrior, to flying a woke flag and being the most liberated thinker, they can't think in any other way. That inability to transcend that is the same whether the addiction is for one thing or for another. What does it take to get the person out of it? You have to take away the drugs. So whatever it is that's causing that thought pattern needs to leave your life. Even, by the way, if that thing makes you feel very good about yourself or makes you feel very good in your life. That's the Sar Yisurin conundrum. My friends, I want to share with you an example of this concept in Yisurin, in Sar, in teaching people to turn. There was a great rabbi, elderly man. He gets up from the Shabbat table and he starts walking to the kitchen. His wife says, "Honey, where are you going?" And the rabbi says, "I'm going to get my macharonim." So she says, "Why don't you tell the kids or the grandkids, let them go get the my macharonim. Not only will you have the my macharonim without getting up, you'll also teach them chinuch, that you're supposed to go and get the Mayim Achronim for your father, for your grandfather. And the rabbi said something genius. He said, if I ask them to go get the Mayim Achronim, I taught them to get Mayim Achronim. If I get up and do it myself, I taught them that when you need something, you get up and you do it yourself. Which is a more important lesson in chinuch? Now, of course, maybe you have to sprinkle a little bit of both. But I love that idea. Sometimes chinuch is given to a child. You're teaching a child by asking them to do something. But sometimes the chinuch that you do for your kid actually is not something that you have to take away or force them to do, but it's something that you emulate yourself. You show them that you're doing it yourself. How many kids today have this problem? That they think that everything in the world is coming to them. I remember making this observation that when I was living in England, so whenever I went to any of the kosher restaurants, there was not a single waiter in any one of those restaurants that was Jewish. And I remember saying to myself, it's interesting. Every person was Eastern European, they came from Romania, they came from Lithuania, they came from, I don't know where they came from. Right? Now over here they come, Joe's saying over here they come from India. But the point is, everyone would come and they would take the jobs that our kids would not be interested in having. Why? I'll just get money from my father. I'll just ask someone else. That idea, we've taught kids in a way that things should get done for them. And why? You tell your kid, go get me this, go get me that, go get me this, go get me that. You think you're teaching them kibud avaim, honoring parents. You might subtly be teaching them that as soon as you can, ask somebody else to do something for you. Fascinating. So the process of chinuch is getting someone to turn, to change their path, finding that fork in the road that's going to change their life for the better, and helping them take that turn. Hashem should bless us, Be'ezrat Hashem, to be able to be mechanech our children. But where does it start with? I love this idea. Sefer Apiryon Shlomo, he says something unbelievable, and I'll end with this. The pasuk says that God chooses Abraham, and you know why he chooses Abraham? Because he will, et banav et beto harai. Because yitzaveh means, normally how would you translate it? He will command. Et banav et beto, his sons and his home, aharai after me. Rashi on the spot says, you know what yitzaveh means? Yitzaveh does not mean will command. Yitzaveh does not mean will teach. Yitzaveh means teaches currently. Ask the Chachamim a fascinating question. Really? Abraham taught in the present moment his children to follow the ways of Hashem? Yitzchak at that point had not even been born. How is he teaching Yitzchak to follow in God's ways if Yitzchak was not born? And the answer, my friends, is that if the way you teach is by emulating, then from the moment you become a responsible adult and you start teaching, not someone else, but yourself, how to behave, how to act, how to speak, you're actually teaching your children. Learning good habits today is not something only that will pay dividends for you, but it will also pay dividends for your kids. You want to ask yourself sometimes, why are my kids so selfish? You might want to ask yourself, if you're selfish. Most people say it's not me, they get it from their mother. They get it from their father, right? Everyone blames and points their fingers at somebody else. But my friends, if your kids are a certain way, then you might want to ask, what are you doing? Or what have you done? Or what didn't you do that let them become that way? Kasher yaser, just like a man, just like a father, just like a person, turns their child, tries to guide them. Even sometimes if that guidance is painful, it is important for us to recognize that responsibility to guide, to help turn, to teach our children something through the actions that we do. The problem is that you can't just become a really good guy or a really fantastic mother overnight when you have a baby. So you need to prepare. The famous story about the rabbi who comes after his child is born and he says, "Rabbi, when should I begin teaching my child?" And the rabbi says, 20 years ago, when you were growing up, when you were educating yourself, when you were making choices. So we have to be able, Be'ezat Hashem, to change our children through personal example. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen. Amen. Rabbi